This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you may have missed this morning, but we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 2nd of March 2022, and I am 2J.
I am JM.
And I am Miss K. Again, in case you missed today's headlines, here they are. Daily Nation, Raila to Kalonzo, we don't need you. The Standard, Azimio storm over secret power deal. The Star, Kalonzo U-turn puts Raila in a tight corner. And finally, People Daily, what really is Kalonzo up to? Not sure about that wording, but we'll get back there.
Yeah.
Anyway, in the aftermath of the Kalonzo Musyoka expose of the 2017 NASA secret deal, we here at the Fort Hall School of Government have 3 questions. Question 1 is on the contents of the deal. According to the secret NASA deal, Raila agreed to a 1-term presidency. After 3 years as president, Raila was to delegate a substantial portion of his national duties to Kalonzo and concentrate on his international duties. The question is this: after seeking power for 25 years as Raila and 56 years as the Odinga family, did Raila really agree to a 3-year presidency? This question is crucial because politics is a game, and game theory is guided by 2 basic assumptions. 1, that all actors are rational, and 2, that all actors are selfish and self-interested. That is, in any deal they make, they will work to get the highest payoff for themselves. So, did a rational, self-interested Raila Odinga really agree to a 3-year presidency? Question 2 is on the time frame of the deal. The secret NASA deal has 2 statements about its time frame. 1, that the commitments made herein shall bind the parties in both 2017 and 2022 elections. And 2, that the agreement will remain valid until the 2022 elections, whether or not NASA wins the 2017 presidential elections. Okay, the agreement is for both elections. The question with regard to time frame is what part of the agreement is to be upheld? That Kalonzo will now be president and Raila will retire, or because NASA didn't win in 2017 that Raila will be president again and Kalonzo will be deputy. And for the record, none of these options will materialize, but that's for another day. Question 3 is on the validity of the secret deal.
Oh yes.
So according to Kalonzo, the 2017 NASA secret deal is a live, binding, legal document. In fact, Kalonzo said that Raila and the witnesses to the deal were in irreparable material damage of the agreement. He even took the time to define this legal term for us. And we see his point. I mean, as a lawyer as well, I understand that when a document is signed by a witness, that witness acts as a neutral third party who helps to prove that the document was signed willingly and not through undue influence, coercion, or duress. But our question on the validity of the secret deal is this: can you effect an agreement when the vehicle through which the agreement was negotiated no longer exists? It's like trying to renegotiate a prenuptial agreement after the divorce. Anyway, we'll never know if the agreement is valid because the key witness to the agreement said he was bound by attorney-client privilege and could neither confirm nor deny the existence and or the contents of the deal. And we believe him.
And so my question following that is this: what was the value of Kalonzo bringing a 5-year-old, seemingly expired NASA document into the public domain? He could have very easily had this conversation with Raila behind closed doors. Why has this document become relevant today? And I think the answer is in high-stakes negotiation. Kalonzo knows that Baba is not going to step down. If anything, this document, as Ms. K has told us, may not even be legally binding. But Kalonzo is doing what is best for Kalonzo. He's negotiating for self. But there's a problem. No matter what game he plays, Kalonzo is not going to get the running position from anyone. Running mate position, rather. He simply doesn't have enough to offer. This moment in our country's history requires that the running mate be a Kikuyu. So our advice to Kalonzo is to be decisive and pick a side. Raila, Ruto, whichever. Because we are inching ever closer to recreating the 3-way election of 2007. So question: if Kalonzo had joined Mwai Kibaki in 2007, would we have avoided the tragedy of post-election violence? I want to think so. And the numbers can answer this for us. The tally at the end of the 2007 election came down to Kibaki with 46.4% of the vote, Raila receiving his ever-consistent 44%, and Kalonzo coming in third place with 8.9% of the vote. So what does this mean? That Kalonzo Musyoka is politically responsible for the outbreak of violence following the 2007 election.
My word.
Bear with me. Had Kalonzo made the decisive decision to pick a side in 2007, he would have taken either candidate over the edge and into a clear winning position. Had he chosen Kibaki's side, for example, he would have given him a clean 55.3% win. And that would have removed all doubt in the eyes of the public about who the real winner was. And it's possible that we could have avoided the darkest period in our electoral history as a country. So the question is, where did Kalonzo think that his 800,000 votes were going to take him? Nowhere. He played the same game in 2007 that he's playing today. High stakes negotiation. And funnily enough, it worked. Even after coming in third place, Kalonzo somehow managed to negotiate the consolation prize of vice president. And in 2022, we faced the same scenario. Today, Kalonzo's 800,000 votes have grown to 1.5 million. But again, where can this take him? Nowhere, and he knows it. So his only solution is to negotiate himself into relevance. But at what cost? Is Kalonzo willing to gamble the fate of the country for his own ego? So we want to offer him another solution. Running mate is out of the question. But in our view, the person who becomes president in 2027 will have done a handshake with Baba today. Raila Odinga has enjoyed power without position, influence without post, all because this man chose country over self. The question is Kalonzo willing to do the same?
Oh, very good question there. Now, yesterday I hypothesized that Peter Munya was the man for deputy president. And today I would like to further that hypothesis and talk about why he could be a pragmatic choice for deputy. Numbers-wise, he is really electable. And let me explain in a roundabout way. The political strategy at play here is referred to as triage thinking. When you visit a hospital, before you go in to see the doctor, you pass by the triage. And the idea of triage is a French wartime expression that originated during the First World War, when French doctors realized that after any major battle, there were more wounded soldiers than there were medical staff to treat them. So they came up with a system to cluster soldiers into 3 groups according to the severity of their case. First were the irredeemable. Second were the exaggerators. And third were those who were redeemable. So a very pragmatic framework there that then enabled them to only prioritize the patients that would then survive. And the same principle applies in elections. In elections, the voting population is broken down into 3, the core base, the persuadables, and the cynics. Which brings us to the question, why Munya and not Peter Kenneth or Martha Karua? And it's simple. The polls are showing us that we should not bother with the UDA support base of Moranga, Nyeri, of Nyandarua, of Laikipia. Those are the cynics.
Very true.
They're squarely in the ODM side. UDA side. So the strategy here then is to divide and conquer the mountain, to ignore the original Central Kenya base and embrace the quote-unquote lesser Kikuyus, or what Professor Mutai Ngugi calls the Kikuyu appendages. That is the Meru, the Embu, the Tharaka, and I think even the Kirinyaga people, who always complain about being bundled up with the Kikuyus of the mountain. Now, these cousins of the Agikuyu, they'll be told to band together to the exclusion of the original mountain Kikuyus. And put together, they comprise about 1/5 of the Kema voting bloc, about 1.25 million voters who will actually come out to vote. Now, if you add on to that the 15% or so of Kiambu that is with Uhuru Kenyatta, that's about 150,000 onwards. We get about 1.4 million votes. And that's more than what we need to get Baba beyond the 50% plus one threshold.
Oh, yes.
And by the way, that is a conservative estimate, and that's just a starting point. And I think this rationale will make even more sense when Mudavadi is selected as the running mate to William Ruto.
Very true.
Oh boy.
We'll realize our worth and go running to Azimio.
Absolutely.
Again, we have a three-part criteria we use to judge the headlines for you. We ask ourselves two questions. Is the headline topical or speculative, repetitive or groundbreaking, and thoughtful, or just plain lazy? Daily Nation, Raila to Kalonzo, we don't need you. Standard, Azimio storm over secret power deal. Star, Kalonzo U-turn puts Raila in a tight corner. And People Daily, what really is Kalonzo up to?
I think that most of the headlines, Nation, Standard, Star, are quite speculative.
Yes,
right?
they are.
I don't believe that there's a storm in Azimio over this, secret MOU. I don't think that Raila would tell Kalonzo, I don't need you.
Yeah.
And I don't think that this MOU would put Raila in a tight spot.
corner. That's also true.
Right?
So I'd say we tossed the Daily Nation, the Standard, and the Star, but People Daily had the potential to give us a winning headline.
Can we talk about English and sentence construction just for a brief moment? What really is Kalonzo up to? You cannot, there's incorrect adverb positioning. The word really is an adverb and you cannot place it where it has been placed.
So we're going to toss People Daily for incorrect placement of really, but I think we can amend and give the best of the worst to People Daily if they reordered to what is Kalonzo really up to?
Which is a valid question. What is he really up to?
Onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, just like the headlines. We have a three-part criteria for judging them for you. We ask ourselves three questions. Are they humorous or dry, satirical or pessimistic, and effective or just plain lazy? Star.
Yeah. Okay, so here we have a caricature of the top political principals all in one room near the empty presidential seat. And sitting on a yellow couch are Mudavadi and Mutangula, who are closely watching Ruto quoting Rigathi Gachagua, who's seated atop the Mount Kenya seat. And behind, behind the couch, Kalonzo is showing Raila an MOU agreement that they had, to convince Raila that he should be, as Kalonzo, the presidential candidate for 2022.
And that agreement appears to be in tatters.
Absolutely.
You know the funniest
It's
thing
a humorous one.
The funniest thing about this cartoon is, had you shown this to somebody in 2017 and said this is the future of Kenyan politics, I don't think nobody would have believed it.
That's very
that
true.
Mudavadi and Wetangula hopped sides to Ruto, that Uhuru and Raila are now friends, that pretty obscure man called Rigathi was now atop, supposedly, Mount Kenya.
Mountain.
I don't think anybody would have believed it.
I know.
Azimio one Kenya
Kwanzaa. Let's put that in the
Nice play
parking
there.
bay. I think it's very funny, and I think we should just put it there for a moment and look at another Kalonzo caricature here in the Daily Nation. We have a caricature of Kalonzo Musyoka with his wipers on his head, and he's having a press conference looking at the media, showing them the MOU and saying, please remind Raila, remind him please of this agreement.
Do you see on the table, it seems as though he's having a conversation with somebody else on the other side.
Yes.
Right?
And
maybe Ndula will tell us who's on the other end of that table.
There's a hint to a hat. It might be who we think it is.
Hint to a hat.
Hint to a hat. I think that's also a contender. Let it stay on the parking bay until we look at the Standard.
In the Standard, Gado, as always, takes us into geopolitical politics. Here we have a 4-pane cartoon. In one corner, it is a caricature of Putin looking at a map, and it says Putin would never annex Crimea. And then right below it, it says Putin would never launch a full-scale war in Ukraine. Then above we go, Putin would never start a war in the Donbass. And then finally it ends with, Putin would never use a nuclear option. And so I think the suggestion, it's arguing rather, that whenever we have assumed that Putin would not do something, he has actually gone on and done the very thing that he said, we didn't expect him to do. And so I think the last thing we're questioning is, he says that he's going to launch a nuclear option. We assume he will not. Does that mean that he will?
He will.
Yeah.
May I say on Putin, there's a brilliant book out there, Prisoners of Geography, that I read years ago. And when this whole crisis struck, I went back to it. And something struck me. A very interesting fact that since the year 1812, Russia has been attacked on average once every 32 years by Europe. So by Germany, by Austria, by France, over the years. And this is why they always try and control the Baltic states together with Ukraine. And then on top of that, layered on top of that, is that the territory all the way from Ukraine, apparently to Moscow, is all flat land.
Yes.
Wow.
So if
Easy
you
access.
so it's easy access. If you bring in troops, if you bring in tanks, you could, in the summertime,
There's nowhere to hide.
You could be in Moscow literally within a week or 2 weeks, depending on whether you're doing blitzkrieg. And this is why, Putin is just putting his foot down and is like, it's ridiculous. And also, to be fair, can you imagine if Russia went to Cuba and said, now Cuba will join the alliance of the Eastern Bloc, the equivalent of NATO?
Yeah.
America would never allow it.
Exactly.
So why should Russia allow Ukraine to join NATO?
It's true. Yeah, and I think that the question that we've been inviting the public to ask is Putin without a point?
Yes.
Right? I think that we're consuming so much Western media that has, shifted the narrative to one point of view. I think we need to shift it back and just give some balance to this question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, looking at our three cartoons, what do you think that we should pick as our winning cartoon?
I'm quite liking Azimio La One Kenya Kwanza.
I like it too.
It has a poetic ring to it.
It does have a poetic ring.
Bit wordy, but I like it. I say we toss the other two and we give our winning cartoon to the Star. And it is a good and accurate representation of the fact that there are actually no interests in politics. There are no permanent enemies or friends in politics, only interests.
Yes.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also on your TV screens. You can find us on Pan Free to Air, GoTV, and Star Times. As a reminder, we had a Best of the Worst headline from the People Daily, but we did an amendment there. And we had a winning cartoon from the Star. I end with a quote on interests and their never-changing nature from Niccolo Machiavelli. And he says, a ruler cannot and should not keep his word when to do so would go against his interests, or when the reason he pledged it no longer holds. Do have a great evening.